Well, let's begin. My name is Daniela Costa. I'm member of the Audiovisual Division of the American Translators Association, and as we do like almost every month, we conduct a series of interviews with really talented people in the industry. Today we'll have a chat with Jorge Díaz Cintas. I think he needs no introduction. We know who he is. And we'll talk a little bit about his new book, which is great, by the way. I'm reading it, so if you haven't got it yet, buy it because it's worth it, really. And today I'm in my element because we'll talk about subtitling, which I love so much. So I will try to bring Jorge into the conversation. Just 1 second.
Here he is. Hola, Jorge. Hi. How are
Hola.
you?
Fine. Sitting here in a grey, miserable London. So, but looking forward to the conversation with you and with the rest of colleagues and friends that are joining in Instagram.
That's great. Thank you. Well, I'm in Buenos Aires, but it feels like London today because it's raining, it's pouring down. It's great, awful. But anyway, we'll have a great time. So the sun will come up somehow, so don't worry.
If anything, is a good time to be in-house and inside the home rather than be outside. So yeah, it'll be time well spent inside.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for being here on a Saturday. I know you are very busy, but we are eager to talk about your book and everything in relation to subtitling. So tell us a little bit, how was the idea of writing this book? You wrote some other books in the past, I know, because I read them. But how was the idea of creating this new book?
Yeah, I've written quite a few books in Spanish, and then I moved on to write them in English together with a colleague of mine, Aline Remal from the University of Antwerp. So we did one in 2007 that was very well received. It was one of the early ones that went beyond the book, and I know we're going to be talking about this a bit later, but this idea that, if you're teaching audiovisual translation or talking about audiovisual translation is a little bit nonsensical not to bring in the audio and the visual equations as well into the book. So we did one that at the time it was somehow revolutionary because it came with a DVD, if anybody remembers what that was. And so we had to, a few years later down the line, we were approached by the publishers telling us that the book was selling well, but that some people were asking that, they were having trouble with the DVD and things wouldn't really play the way they should do. Could we just think about it and then come up with a new version? So the beginning was going to be something really minor and take away DVD and put OTT or platforms. But then we discovered that things have changed so much, and it was so radically different in certain areas, particularly technology, workflows, industry, and things like that, that then we just redid the whole thing. So yeah, it is a legacy from the previous one, but there is a lot of new things that we didn't have before. And that was the idea. So it was going to take us not long, but eventually it took a little bit longer than we would have liked. So it only came out recently, and it should probably have come out a year or so ago. But Touchwood is out, and I hope people will like it and will enjoy reading it and will learn from it.
Yeah, I love it. I'm in the process of reading it. I haven't finished it yet. But it's great. I haven't had the chance to go into the exercise part because I'm working a lot. But it's such a powerful tool for us subtitlers because it covers, I think, everything you need to know. Even if you are an expert or, if you're an experienced subtitler, maybe you can learn something new or you can reaffirm what you know. But if you are just beginning, this is what you have to read. This is the tool for you because, it's awesome. I love it. So
Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna blush now. I'm gonna blush now.
I really love it. Now let's go a little bit deeper into the book, and you used, I mean, like two platforms, if I'm not mistaken. One is Una. How do you pronounce it? Because I never know. I mean, I use
I'm not really sure myself. I overdo the O's because it's 3 O's. So I always say
yeah,
Una.
that's why.
So I
Una.
think I think some the developers themselves, they call it Una. But I always
Okay.
overdo it because otherwise people end up with only 2 O's and it has to be 3.
Yeah. Well, so you used Una and the other one, which was WinCaps.
WinCaps,
so yeah, how was this process of this crossover between these two platforms with the same material? Was it difficult?
It's always challenging to bring in technology to a medium that is medieval, like books. So you're working on paper, you're working on a book. Now you can get the electronic version as well, but the main drive for the publishers is the book. So the book needs to be self-contained and be easy to navigate. And then on this occasion, we were also trying to make the most of technology on the side. So the previous book came. I've always had a very strong and close connection and collaboration with WinCaps, with screen systems, and we used it before in the previous book. It was in a different format. So we just continued with their collaboration. And they were very eager and very generous with their support and with their availability. So, by getting a copy of the book, you get 3 months free access to the software that is fully fledged. It's not modified. The one that we used before, it was modified and it would only allow you to do certain formats. Now is the whole the full Monty that you get with it. So that's been very, very generous of them. And then the relationship there was easy. It was already established. We could maximize things that we had used before, and that was reasonably okay. What we've done is create quite a few exercises that then WinCaps is still desktop operated, so people, the buyers of the book, will need to install it on their computers. And then on the companion website, there are quite a few exercises, and it's indicated which of those exercises will be, to be exploited with WinCaps. What we felt was that the time had come as well to give visibility to the cloud and to the new platforms that are out there to do subtitling. Also dubbing is evolving in that direction, and as you know, it can be a little bit tricky because most of the platforms, the new platforms, are so new that companies are a little bit cagey on who is seeing what, and is the competition going to learn unfair advantages, and so most of them are only for internal usage or for people who are actually working for the company. And sometimes even then, if you're working for the company, your usage will be modified and you will only have access to certain areas. Yeah. So we were looking around, and I know people in Una, and so I didn't have to persuade them too much because they were very keen as well to get involved in the project. And so we started working on that and see how we could integrate them and bring them on board. And it was reasonably easy. It is, they are already based online, so there is no need for any installation in computers or anything. So you can just access from anywhere in the world as long as you go to the website. And then what we've done is that created as well several exercises, quite a few exercises actually, that come preceded by the logo of Una to alert people that those exercises will be better exploited with Una. I know you're going to be asking me more about this, but to give you an idea, what we've tried is maximize the technology, of course, and then some exercises can be done, or we recommend that they are done with WinCaps, so that people get familiar with software that is top-notch and is fully professional, used in the industry still widely. And then also to use the platform Una. But on some occasions, because we, after all, dealing with subtitling, we also give or have produced some exercises that we allow people to use whichever of the two platforms. Or whichever of the two tools they prefer. So we just tell them, okay, fine, we've developed this. We usually give a suggested key, particularly for those who are self-learning rather than in an educational environment. And then what we do is, okay, this is the exercise, and now it's up to you to choose whether you want to use one or the other. Mm-hmm. And that way we've created roundabout in the website, there are more than 300 documents altogether and files. Wow. Videos, Una files, W32, which are the ones produced with WinCaps, PDFs, Word documents, Excel files as well. So it was a pretty laborious experience and exercise for us.
Yes, yes, I can see that. And it's great because, I work mostly on the cloud nowadays. I've been doing this for 20-something years. So I've seen everything. From desktop, company-owned software, open source software as well, and now the cloud. And I think Una is one of the ones that it's available for anybody. You pay a fee, of course, and you can work on the cloud. It doesn't happen with other platforms from other companies, like the one used by Netflix or Sfera or some other ones. So it's great that it's addressed in the book and that you can have access to the tool and you can explore it, because if you're a freelancer and if you want to provide your services anywhere, I think it's a wonderful and complete tool to work with. And being on the cloud is so, in handy for us, because you can work anywhere and your work won't be lost. So if you have your computer crashes or anything, you can keep working, and that's great.
Yeah, you just move to the next computer and hope that it won't crash. So you can access from anywhere. I do agree with you, but I still have the feeling that there is a lot more potential for translators and the cloud. Right now, and I think originally the cloud came to be as a fantastic project management tool, as a management tool that would allow you from onboarding to invoicing, what they like to call now from end-to-end processes. And that's when it, companies saw that there was an economy of scale, that they could have everything in one place, allows, as a project manager, you can have an access to all the languages that have been working at the time that people are working. The client can come into the process before, the ending of the whole translation and so on. But I still think that for the translators, there could be so many other things. It could be, I keep fighting for this idea of having a virtual office, that you just walk into that cloud and you can see that Peter, who is working into Brazilian, is also working on the same film as you. And then, Elisabetta in Italy is also, and you happen to speak Italian, and then you can see what she's done for her translation, or you can get some inspiration from other translations, as you would do if you were working in an office with other people and you don't know something, or you're a bit dense creatively speaking, and then you go and ask somebody, oh, how did you do this, or how did you resolve that? And those areas are still a little bit behind. I think there is not so much potential for us, but I think everything will come. We'll just keep pushing that. The technology needs to be for everyone, for companies and for developers and for broadcasters and OTT distributors, but also for translators, which are, after all, the ones initiating and making sense of the translation and the whole process.
Of course, definitely. Yes, we are so disconnected sometimes. Even I always say that you don't even have contact with the person reviewing your work sometimes. And then it is released and your name is there and you see that there were changes and you say, but I didn't write that, and why did they change? Sometimes you understand the changes. But some stylistic changes or things that you say, okay, it's the same translation, from a different point of view. Why do they do this? And you have nowhere to go to because you don't know who's in charge of the whole process. It's so, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, discouraging sometimes for us. But anyway,
it is sad because translation, one of the beauties of translation is that you are constantly learning. That you are subtitling a comedy, and then you're subtitling and you're laughing aloud, and then you just end up with a drama, and then you might, shed your tears here and there when you're translating, and then you got a documentary about a topic that you never thought about. So you're learning. And that learning experience, it would be very easy to also do it with your peers. You just get feedback from colleagues that you can trust, that they, they have got experience, and that's what it makes you be better at the end of the day. We do that in many professions. I've been teaching for many years, and I still now and again get other teachers to sit in my class to see how am I doing it, and whether they can learn or I can learn, and they will give me feedback and tell me, okay, have you ever thought about these other things? You go, yes or no, or you might like it or not like it at all, but there is a debate, and I it's always, I've always found it a little bit surprising that there is this sort of fear or this secrecy that they won't tell you who has done your work, and then you don't get any feedback. But it's equally bad when you are doing, for instance, you're doing the subtitles and you don't know who's doing the dubbing of the same film. And in the industry at the time with the DVD, you will get the DVD and then you'll see your subtitles, and then the dubbed version, which was totally different, maybe for some reason. But you say, well, who has done that? And you never knew, and you never shared any comments with the other person or anything. And I'm not really sure if it's on purpose, which might well be, or if sometimes it's a little bit of incompetence that, the workflows are not well done in the sense that, all these things could be streamlined and it will be beneficial for everybody. I'm not sure. I'm still thinking about that one, what the reason is, because it doesn't really make much sense.
No, absolutely not. But anyway, this is these are the working conditions nowadays, especially if you work for large companies that work for large streaming services, or even for theatrical releases. And it's just like that. I mean, nothing, and you finish your translation, maybe you get a feedback saying, okay, you have to correct this, or maybe change this because it sounds better, or whatever. But after that, it's just, you're blind. Nothing. I mean, nothing until the movie is released, and that's when you get discouraged sometimes. But anyway, it comes with the territory. I got used to it, but we don't have to be so, compromising. We have to, I think, maybe fight for, or tell companies, okay, do this, please. Let us get in touch with the reviewer, or maybe the dubbing team, so we can agree on some specific terms or phrases or whatever, and then each one will work on their own, with their own limitations. Subtitling is not the same as dubbing, of course, but it could be, I think maybe in a few years we can, if companies are moving into the cloud and they don't work so, in an automatic way as now, maybe in a few years we'll see the results. I don't know.
Yes, but it's crazy because we're having now a conversation. Yeah. You are in Argentina, I am in the UK. There are lots of people listening to us. Technology is there. Technology would be so simple and easy for that feedback to be circulated. But it is sometimes is either that they haven't even thought about it, and then there's the will. But I think, translators, educators, associations, that's what we should be doing. And I'm sure we will get somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, I'm positive about that. Yeah, definitely. And we talked about the book and how to read the book and how to approach the different exercises and so on. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about Una, because we talked about working on the cloud. Maybe this is new for some people. So there's a difference between Una Create and Una Pro, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes,
what would
I'll
be
try
the
to
main
explain a
difference?
little bit to you. Yes, they do have.
I work with Ona, so I know how it works, but I want you to explain it, of
Yeah,
course.
And sometimes it's very idiosyncratic. So it just some terminology that certain companies use, and then you just don't quite understand. And one day you explain, oh, okay, I see. Another company calls it differently, and so on. But on this occasion, yes, Una is a platform where several tools are installed. So once you land inside their platform, you will see several modules: create, translate, review, transcribe, burn and encode, which are more or less captioning as well, which are more or less the activities and tasks that you will be expected to do in the industry. So create is nothing more than spotting. But they call it create, okay? And on that one, you will be doing spotting, and you can do from scratch and so on. All these modules are easily interconnected, so they are presented separately for ease of perception, but they are basically, in essence, the same tool, and you can work with them equally. So you've got all those. Create, which is spotting. Translate, which is working with templates. Review is transparent quality control, and then you're allowed to give lots of annotations and information to the other translator. Transcribe is more to create scripts for audio. You only receive audio, and then you want to produce a template or a script. And then burn and encode, which is very exciting, particularly from an educational point of view. Allows you to burn the subtitles so that the students get really, really happy because they've got this video with the subtitles that they can use to anyone in the world, and they can put on any website or whatever. And then they make a subtle distinction between create as such and then create pro. And this happens with all the tools. So you've got translate pro, review pro, and so on. And it only means that the pro allows you for further functionality. So the main distinction between create and create pro is that pro will give you the benefit of the sound wave and the shot changes. Okay, whereas the create won't have that functionality. So I think they sell it, the rental is slightly different what you pay, but that is one of the main issues. There are a few other ones. For instance, the Create Pro will incorporate as well a wide selection of checks that you can conduct with the tool, whereas the other one doesn't. So there is a little bit. Having said that, these are tools that are constantly improving. And as you know, and I think this is something that you wanted to discuss, but memory tools, machine translation, speech recognition, all these things are being tested and proved and changed and then doing other things. So I can see that in a few years' time, this distinction between the pro and not pro might change, and things will become much more mainstream. Having the shot changes will become as a matter of fact, that everybody will have that, or the sound wave or things. But yes, that is mainly the distinction there.
Yeah, well, the sound wave is like the savior when you are, especially when you are spotting, because it's a visual representation of what you are hearing. So it's really useful. And the shot changes marker, I don't know how it's called, but it's great because, sometimes you see, when you work on trailers, for example, they have so many shot changes, and it's a very short video, and you have to do it. It's like 1 minute, 2 minutes long, and you have to condense, but everything has to be there because it has to attract the audience. Of course, it's advertising in a way.
Yeah.
And these shot changes markers are really, really useful, especially for those materials. Yeah, definitely. And speaking about, all these, these platforms and technology and everything. Now we are seeing machine translation in audiovisual products. It's given, in my case, it's given as it's called something like translation aid, or I don't know. and you may choose to populate your subtitles or your events or however they are called
Whatever we want to
with
call
this
them,
machine-generated translation or not. In some cases, it's already populated, so you just delete all text because it's useless, and then you start working from scratch. What do you think? Do you think machine translation will manage to get into subtitling? I mean, and do it right or not?
Well, I started myself, my PhD, which I did many years ago in the last millennium. I was working with Woody Allen. And that was my case study for my analysis. And compared to that, Woody Allen machine translated, unless you wanted to do something really stupid and silly and probably humorous, that you could use, but otherwise it's pointless. And it was a time as well where audiovisual consumption was more films than anything else. So a film is very short by comparison. 1.5 hours, 2 hours is already too long. A film. And we've now come to see that is becoming a bit more fringe and marginal. And now the trendy thing is long TV series that have got lots and lots of episodes. And if they prove popular, they will have lots of seasons and so on. And I can see now the beauty of some tools, if anything, to help us manage the vocabulary that is being used, the expressions, the consistency, and the terminology that might be spreading throughout, I don't know how many series and episodes, and then you don't really remember what you did at the beginning, or you did it 2 years ago, and God knows what is happening in between, and so on. So I think there is some mileage, as they say in this country, to go with some of the technology. But my fear sometimes is that we're trying a bit too much at the top end of what it could be done, and then we end up with nonsensical results and with information that is not really helping anyone. I know that some translators, very seasoned translators with lots of experience, have been asked to be taken a look or to try and work with machine translation output, and it takes them longer, and in some cases they're actually charging the companies more than if they were doing it from scratch, because they say, well, if you want to use this for your analysis and it's for research and whatever, it's actually taking me longer. I will be quicker if I did from the original, so I'll do it, but I'll charge a bit more. And occasionally, because it's still very experimental, what many people are doing is experimental, and they don't want to antagonize a certain sector of the translators population, the seasoned ones, the experienced ones that have been working a long time here. You don't want to be, you've got already your speed, your rhythm, they know that you deliver, and they don't want to throw a spanner in the works and make it difficult for you, and so on. So they're trying to experiment and see how that can be done. And that is why, and I know who you were, I assume I know who you were talking about when you said, it's not machine translation. Do not call it machine translation. We're going to call it assisted translation, or whatever it is, and we're going to give translators all the freedom of the world. Okay, if you don't like it, just destroy, delete, and carry on with your translation, which I think is a wise approach to try and break the fears of some people. And some people might say, well, okay, fine, I don't like it. I just, as a matter of fact, as soon as it appears, I just destroy or delete or not activate the proposed translations. Some others are a bit more adventurous and say, well, okay, I can see that some kids around the block that have been using Google Translate all their lives, and this is something that then they experiment and then they continue with that. For some of them, they may be a bit more open-minded and say, okay, fine, I'll use that, and I know how to use it in a way that is to my benefit, to my advantage, and then I can increase and blah, blah, my productivity. But I think we're still far away from any decent results. Surprisingly, there was I think it was the day before yesterday or something, a report came of some health authorities in the USA using machine translation for some of the medical reports, and then the results are that the machine translation for those reports is totally wrong and it shouldn't progress as well. Surprise, surprise. We knew that. They didn't need to do that with anybody else. We could have told them rather than continue doing those research and testing with people. So I don't think we have to fear that that's going to be taking the jobs. Now, what we need to be clear about it is that there are things that will help us, and those are the ones that we should fine tune a bit more, like terminology consistency, for instance. But that shouldn't be at the expense of, again, the other excuse. And I think that's what some people have here is, okay, you're going to be faster because I'm giving you garbage here to translate, and then you've got already something here, therefore I'm going to be paying you less. And I think that's what we need to resist, and that's what I think needs to be reconsidered. And then we need to say, okay, fine, we're going to see how this is, see whether we can get more done, which is one of the problems in the industry, is that there is a lot more to be done, but without necessarily having always to have an impact on the translator's income. And because we risk of making the industry unsustainable, but it's not sustainable if people, if the fees go down, the people that are really experienced, that have got years of experience and years of work behind their backs, they're not going to be, they're going to jump onto other fields that I think are more profitable for them, and who could, blame them. So I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that we need to. There are quite a few initiatives out there. There are new associations that have been created that try to raise the visibility of, media entertainment beyond our realm, beyond our, friends in translation, friends in the LSPs, but also the creators that sometimes produce things and they don't even realize what is going to happen to them, and they prepare to spend millions of dollars and hundreds of millions in productions, and then they go for a few hundred for a translation, which doesn't make sense in anybody's mind, I don't think.
No, definitely not. But anyway, if we could fight for it, and get better working conditions, it would be awesome. And at the same time, whenever I work on these platforms where I have this assisted translation, or every time I write a subtitle, I say, okay, I'm teaching the machine, I'm feeding the monster. But at the same time, it helps, because sometimes you have a yes, it is, or hello, how are you? And maybe you just push a button and then you have your translation there without typing. Yeah. So in some cases, it may be useful, but audiovisual translation, and especially subtitling, is so nuanced that, the same phrase can be said in so many different ways, depending on the context, on the tone, and everything, that I don't know if
and even the translation will get there. We haven't done much research on this. So, the same sentence said slowly or said fast is going to be translated differently, because if they say it slowly, you might go for a literal translation, whatever that means, but it's close to what they've said. If it's very fast, you're going to have to start pruning text and deleting and reconsidering your thing. And it doesn't mean that one is wrong and the other one is right in terms of linguistics, but it's simply that that the technical dimension is going to force you to do certain things. So you will get that translation, but it doesn't fit. It just, the characters per second here are crazy, so I'll have to redo the whole thing and so on. So there are many other things. And then again, if you want to train the engines, do you train them with pre-edited templates, or do you go for verbatim templates? And some people prefer to work with verbatim, because then they can choose how to condense the information rather than being told that this is it, that's being condensed, and in your language might not work, or you might lose the irony of the original because what they're telling you to translate or whatever. Very, very little research has been done on that. We know from other areas that creativity suffers, and then register and the lexical dimension gets refrained and gets less creative, so you end up with less creativity in your lexis that if you were translating from scratch. So some research that has been done in other fields, it tells us that the engines will always tend to neutralize the text, whereas when we translate, we can be more creative with jargon and colloquialisms and things like that. So I think it's still a lot to be done. And I don't think I'm going to be seeing machine translation replacing anyone anytime soon in audiovisual.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely. And going back to the conversation topic nowadays, COVID. How do you think it has affected our workflow as audiovisual translators, or especially subtitlers? What is your view on this matter?
Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure how much has changed for some of us. I don't do translations anymore as a job, because I do my training, my teaching, and research and so on. But normally I spend lots of time alone in front of the computer, writing books and doing things. And COVID is come, somebody tells me, and it seems to be out there, but I continue to be in front of my computer working at home. And I know many translators have been also saying, we're not fine, things are changing in such a day basis. I'm in front of my computer, I'm working.
Like 10 more seconds. Let me see if I can reconnect. There you are.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I lost you for a minute.
I know. I continued talking because I was wondering whether it was only you and the rest of people could follow. So I just continued. But as I was saying, that, for many people that spend lots of time working on their own in front of the computer and subtitling, COVID out there or not, it doesn't make much of a difference in the sense that you're still working there on your own. But it has done a huge, of course, it has had a lot of impact on how the industry operates. Everybody's now working from their homes. Technology has moved to the cloud, whether it is for subtitling that was already being initiated, and now it's been triggered much quicker. But also communication, Zoom, that nobody knew a year ago. Now everybody's using Zoom or Teams or whatever other platforms that we can talk to each other. And then also dubbing, which was probably one of the audiovisual practices that most has felt COVID, when the students have to close, studios have to close, people couldn't just mingle and get together in the studios, and they have to find alternatives, and they've gone to recording in the cloud, and people being creating their little studios at home and doing the recording not with nobody else. So I'm not a voice talent or anything, but I imagine it must be a challenge that you just don't see anyone else, and you don't know what else anybody else is doing, but you just do it in front of your computer and go for it. So I think that has been a big change in there. There are also been a few changes, I think, in the material that is needed to be translated. Of course, production into English in English was stopped because people couldn't go out to the recording programs, and then companies have to stop and think how they could bypass this situation. So for a period, no new things were being produced, and companies needed, because more of us were at home and watching telly. The growth of all these OTT channels or providers has been exponential in that sense. So they needed to find more material, and what they've end up doing is lots of material that is not necessarily in English, looking in archives, looking in catalogs, translating Swedish or Czech films that they had somewhere as well. This will be new for us. So yeah, I can hear from many people, translating programs and from languages that at other times weren't very popular at all. We now hear that Netflix is investing, or is going to be investing, 500 million in Korean programs. So they're banking heavily on K-drama as they know it, and just very sort of casually. But I talk to my mom quite regularly these days. She's still in Spain, and just recently she's been hooked on Turkish TV soap operas, which we never had in Spain before. But now, there's no day that I ring her up and she updates me on what's going on in those TV series. So we can see many other languages coming into the equation and making it. We thought a few years back, we thought that everything was English produced, and I remember dissuading some students, if you don't translate from English in audiovisual, forget it. It's going to be very difficult because virtually everything is in English. And now I can see that other languages are coming into the system, the ecosystem, and we'll see how we resolve this. Right now, templates, pivot languages, we'll see how that goes. And
yeah, that was, I was going to ask you, because last year I worked a lot with English as a pivot language. I worked from Hindi, from Polish, from Turkish, Arab, Korean, Japanese, and I feel so lost sometimes because this is a trend in the industry and will continue. We can't stop it. It's even sometimes I know it's difficult, for example, to find a translator, from, I don't know, Norwegian into Greek, for example. Maybe everybody works maybe with English, French, Spanish, of course, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, or Russian. But there are some languages that do not, where you cannot have a match, let's say, between translators, and especially audiovisual translators. So using English as a pivot language, what do you think the industry has to do it right? In a way, and how these templates have to be created.
Yes, I think, one thing here, as you mentioned, things come and they're here to stay and so on. But to me, I've been around for quite a few years, and sometimes it feels like plus ça change, plus la même chose. Yeah, we go around in circles, and then you can see that the way that sometimes we're working now, it used to be the same before. Some people were doing, I remember subtitlers in the UK subtitling films in languages that they didn't understand at all. And they will be sent a text and they will be just cutting and following more or less what they were hearing and blah, blah. And that was a very standard way of doing it, that somebody will be doing the translation and then the technician will take care of that translation, reformulate, change, and do things differently. So it went away from us. Now we're finding this idea as well of, we cannot translate from certain languages. And I think sometimes, it's a little bit naughty in the way it's done. You mentioned, for instance, Spanish and so on. I can give you examples of people in certain languages being asked to translate big Spanish productions that have made it throughout the world through a pivot language, through English. And people say, well, really? You can find, I'm certain you can find in my country people who speak Spanish and they could translate from scratch. So I don't really want to translate through a pivot, knowing that there are people out there. So sometimes there is a mismatch there that the industry, I think, is probably, they think, oh, it's easy. We already know the people that we have. We trust them as good translators. We'll send them, even if it's in another language, and we won't bother anymore. And unnecessarily so, because sometimes there are people in those languages, but they don't have their workflows or their catalogs of translators clearly enough to be able to match them much clearly and much more close by. But as you say, I do agree that there are some language combinations that doesn't matter how hard we try, it's going to be challenging to find people that can translate directly from that language. And pivoting in translation and interpreting is very common. The European Union is doing it day in and day out as well. And many meetings happen through English when, there is need of an interpreter, that the two languages cannot be reconciled because they don't have experts. So it is something that, yes, I think the extent to which is being done these days needs to be reconsidered, because there are many other potentials in the industry, and there is a lot of talent that could be maximized and could be tapped into for other language combinations. But I think we need to try and adjust. I was talking about this with somebody not long ago, and we don't even have a name for the person dealing with templates. We've got a translator, we've got a subtitler, but we don't have a templater or somebody that is doing templates. And we know now that the industry relies heavily on people producing templates. And now there is a drive of creating templates that are going to be much more detailed, they're going to have this sort of linguistic translating sensibility that they will done by somebody. Well, I can sense that this is going to be problematic to translate, so you need to know that this is a specific jargon of black people in my city, or this is a Jewish little reference here that tells you that the character is actually of a Jewish origin, or whatever it is that might not be clear in that dialogue exchange. But it is an area, that I don't think nobody trains anyone to how do you create a good template. I've never really trained my students to do that. We've always been translating, and then you use technology, and then you use be sure that you understand what they're saying and so on. But not really, if you were to explain to someone, if you were to produce something which is going to be the basis for all these other languages, what do you think you need to incorporate here? And I know the big players like, Netflix, they already have some guidelines. And because they make everything available on their website, you've got guidelines on how to do a template, not subtitles, nothing else, but what things you should bear in mind. And now the KNP, the key names and phrases list that they're also putting a lot of emphasis to make sure that, we keep consistent and so on. But I think this is a good way if we need to deal with this in some form or shape, but it's still a while to go, and more discussions and more analysis and more studies on what is it that is needed there, bringing in the translators as well to say, okay, fine, we've got this experiment here, this particular film, what did you find that it was challenging? We know that with Parasites it was very difficult to translate from English because, of course, English, you just end up with a you that could address anyone and everyone, and it could be formal and informal. Whereas Koreans, they make really subtle distinctions in the way they're addressing each other, and then you lose that if you go through English. Never mind with all the genders and things like that. So these are the things that we need to be discussing and working into creating those necessary templates that now, if you're in the cloud, you could have integrated somehow. There is a word that you don't understand, and maybe you just go there, it highlights and give you a definition of that text, or it can give you information on why that text is being humorous in that context. And then you want to activate, as you do with your mouse, when you pass over certain text, then you get a little window explaining whatever it is. So I think it is something that companies are looking into, but it will take a little while until we get something more firm. But as you say, some things seem to be here to stay, and I see this one as well as one that is not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, I think the key to a good template, if you're working from a non-English audio, the key is on the notes. I mean, as many notes you have, I mean, there is a box or something. All templates have, all platforms are different, but they have a way of inserting notes. So if you have notes, in one of the companies I work, these are called editors, the ones who create the templates. These are called editors. I don't know if that's an accurate word for this, but this is the name they are getting.
Because there are so many editors in other areas. I think I've used somewhere templater. A bit like Terminator. It goes with cinema and translator, templater, subtitler. But yes,
it reminds me of Templarios. But anyway, it's the word templars. But I mean, the key is on the notes. I mean, if you have good notes, explaining notes, sometimes for things that are obvious, I mean, you read and you say, okay, I understand this, but then you think it twice and you say, okay, they inserted this because you are not hearing the original audio in English, and maybe it's useful, maybe not for Spanish, but for some other language.
For other languages,
I think it's a good way, it's a good approach. I mean, leaving as many notes as possible. Once I had to translate from scratch, to create a template into English, but luckily it was an Argentinian series. So I knew the jargon. It was about a famous boxer. So I knew the jargon. I knew, I mean, the tone and why, when a word was saying as an insult or not, maybe a curse word. So I tried to do what I could and leave as many notes as I could. trying to be on the shoes of the other person who was going to translate that into their own language. So, but maybe it's kind of an exercise. I mean, it takes time. It's difficult.
Yes, but as you say, it does take a flair for the language, and you need to me, you need to be a translator to be doing things like this. You need to know that if you were to translate that into another language, and I'm not convinced that some of the people preparing these documents have that sort of background or experience, and sometimes you know they might not think twice about certain things that you as a translator know. God, that looks so simple, but it's going to be a difficult task to convey the colloquialism or to convey the degree of formality or whatever it is that you want to do there. But then again, as I said earlier on, that, you know, we sort of go around in circles. I can still remember some of the dialogue and continuity scripts that were created a while ago that were really, really detailed to the extent that some translators felt a little bit patronized and think, oh, this is, you know, it's telling me a bit too much. I know I am a translator. Why do you need to give me this information? So again, we're going back to those sort of original or whatever, not original, but for a time, they were very, very common, particularly for theatrical releases. And I think we need to go and revisit them and see what sort of information will be needed. It's not only going to help you to be much more accurate in your translation, but it's also going to help you speed up your process rather than having to Google every other minute if you've already got the information there and it's alerting you to certain things. So
yeah, it's very, very useful. Yeah. Here we have a question. Let me check. There have some YouTube videos I wanted to subtitling when it comes, and
I
then
think the person is still writing.
Yeah, it's no, yeah, but I cannot. I mean, it's cut off. And then I even translated. Here it is. French language YouTube video on COVID last year before community contributions were in it, as one of my classes talked about audiovisual translation. Okay, they are sharing their experiences.
Their experiences.
That's great.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
And last but not least, well, we have like 5 minutes only. I'm sorry. Very quickly about the pool, which is great. Also, it's a directory for professionals, for translators. So, what is it? Can you tell us?
Okay, it's been a while in the industry and in meetings and gatherings that there is a shortage of talent somehow. I would imagine that the shortage of talent, it varies depending on languages and language combinations and territories or countries and so on. But it's been discussed in many, many areas and many gatherings. So that's why Una as well took this initiative here in creating a directory, a platform, a place, a database where people could just register their services and could offer what they can do and how they can do it. And since then, it's been growing. It is supported by quite a substantial number of companies, so they're tapping into that talent. And when they've got needs of certain languages or needs for projects that they don't have enough translators, then they go and search for them there. So it is one of the uniqueness is that is the remit is audiovisual translation, because you do find other directories where are much more general, and there is another one in prose, I think, for subtitling, but probably with less people than this one now. But yes, it was that idea of bringing people together, not just subtitlers, because there is also people that do templates, people that do dubbing. I think it's potentially also open for people who may be offering voice talent jobs, audio description, captioning, and anything that relates to audiovisual translation as we understand it. So yeah, it's been exciting. It's still in its infancy, it's growing. The idea is that maybe we could try to professionalize our industry a little bit more with some sort of professional certification, as we already find in many other areas. The American Translators Association has been certifying translators for many years, the same as the Institute of Translation and Interpreting, the Chartered Institute of Linguists in the UK, and in many other countries. And nobody in the world is so far certifying anything in subtitling or dubbing, for instance. There has been a lot more going on in accessibility. So you've got a few bodies that will have their own certification. But I think this could be a way to make sure that people get some sort of recognition, and if this certification acknowledged and cherished by the industry, it could open doors to people, the good ones, that they don't need to be tested again, and they could just show that they've got that. So that is all in the pipeline, and which is always exciting to have projects.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Because we are professionals at the end of the day.
Totally.
The problem is that there's so much fun stuff, and people saying, okay, I can do that, it's so easy, but it's not. And we are language professionals, linguists, translators, whatever you want to call us, but we invest a lot of our time and effort to study, to improve on software, maybe, on books, and of course, we have to be treated like that. So this would be absolutely wonderful. I'm hoping we can get there in the near future.
The idea is that quite a few people, is to bring people from all walks of life. So right now there are people from translators associations, there are professional translators, there are people representing companies, and also people representing education. So hopefully we'll be able to get somewhere with that. But you'll be hearing from us much more with the time.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you. Okay, well, we have 2 minutes, so I don't want this to be cut off. First of all, I want to thank you again for a million times for your time. It was such a wonderful chat. I think we covered everything in relation to subtitling.
I'm very happy as well.
Yeah, and it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. For me, it's a dream come true. So I'm really glad about this. So, on behalf of the Audiovisual Division, the Leadership Council, thank you again for being here, and we hope we can see you again in the future.
Thank you very much to you personally, and to the association for having invited me, and for having spent such a lovely hour. And thank you to everyone else joining us through this media.
Okay, thank you, Jorge.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Okay, well, how cool was that? We covered everything, every topic in relation to subtitling. If you haven't read the book, read it, because it's really, really useful, and you learn many new things. Especially the approach, the way it's written, and the way it's or the chapters are organized is very. I wouldn't say user-friendly, but reader-friendly. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for being there. It was an absolute pleasure. Remember, we'll do this like once a month, more or less, but follow our posts, be there, and I'll see you next time. See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.